Nice fall afternoon. The Middlebury Rotary Club is very proud to put this on this afternoon, and we're going to experience a great presentation, I'm sure. My name's Eric Denew. I'm from the Middlebury Rotary Club. I am a past president of the Middlebury Rotary Club, and our club now consists of 50 plus members, and we're doing a lot of good in this community, and we're very proud of the things we do, and we're proud to have this for the community. So here comes the introduction.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready. Okay. I'm brother.
Chris Waddell was the first nearly unassisted paraplegic to summit 19,300 foot Mt Kilimanjaro in a handcycle. A 13-time Paralympic medalist, he is also a Hall of Famer for the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Association and Paralympics. He began to ski race at 6 and was competing for Middlebury College when his ski popped off in the middle of a turn. The resulting fall left him paralyzed from the waist down. But he started to monoski less than a year later and soon became the fastest in the world. The Dalai Lama honored him as an unsung hero of compassion. Skiing Magazine put him on their list of 25 greatest skiers in North America, and People Magazine named him one of the 50 most beautiful people. I give you Chris Waddell. Warm welcome for Chris.
All right, thank you very much. So this is actually the presentation that I do for schools, which is as appropriate for adults as it is for children. So any of you who are, willingly claim to be adults, this will be fine for you. And the program's called Name Tags, and it's about the labels that we put on ourselves and others. I mean, we've all worn a name tag, right? Hello, my name is, but we're a bunch of other name tags too, don't we? Based on where we're from, how we talk, what we drive, these kinds of things. And we wear so many different name tags, and sometimes those can be a little bit misleading. Do you mind if I show you a quick little video and then we'll get to it? Okay. As long as this works, Joe. Okay. Past, ostracized, infirm. These words are often used to define disability. But if we open our minds, we might see something different. I'm going to need some help from you guys as we go along. You guys okay with that? You sure? Okay, you're not going to be too bashful on me? Okay, all right, good. Because the name tags that we wear sometimes can be our limitations. Like my wheelchair in a lot of ways is a name tag. Comes with it expectations, and potentially some limitations. So our motto is, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. So when I count to 3, I want this side of the room to say it's not what happens to you. You guys think you can handle that? Okay. And then you guys over here are going to answer with, it's what you do with what happens to you. You ready? You a little nervous? It's okay. It'll all be fine. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you.
Exactly. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. It's really easy to say those words when they're up there on the screen, right? And then something goes wrong, and it's really easy to remember just the first part. I can't believe what happened to me. So this is going to be the hard part for you guys. I think that sometimes the kids might have an easier time with this, so you are going to have to prove me wrong. But I'm going to give you permission to interpret these words however you choose. You can do it in a funny voice, you can do it loudly, you can do it quietly, you don't have to do it in unison. I said this to a group of PTA people at one point, and I thought their heads were going to explode. They were trying not to do it in unison, and they just couldn't. So anyway, I have much higher hopes for you guys than I did for them. So you will see your part as we come along, but it really is, it's a great motto. This idea of things are going to happen. It's what I do with what happens. So anyway, we go to this. I have to be positioned properly in order for my clicker to work. So part of the reason that I'm here is that almost 30 years ago, Eric said it in the introduction, I had a skiing accident when I was here. It was the first day of Christmas vacation. I went home. My brother and I went to the mountain where we'd grown up. We grew up at Berkshire East in Massachusetts and met up with a few buddies. Took a couple of runs before we were going to train that day. And in the middle of a turn, my ski popped off. Fell in the middle of the trail. Didn't hit anything but the ground. And I broke 2 vertebrae. Damaged the spinal cord. So my life changed potentially really significantly in that moment. We're talking about the name tags that we wear. Before my accident, it was really about who I was. First priority, my father was a teacher. If I didn't do well in school, I really didn't get a chance to do much of anything else. But some of what I thought may be different was being a ski racer. I thought by being a ski racer, it showed that I was able and that I could do whatever I wanted to do and that I'd be successful, which as you're growing up and as we continue to grow up, that continues to be our biggest worry, right? I hope that I will be successful. But then I had my accident, and it wasn't as much about me as it was, a little closer here, as it was, Joe? Okay, now it worked. That's all we needed to do was get you to move. So, you know, it wasn't as much about me as it was about what had happened to me, but you know what, some things don't change. I continued to be a student, but, oops, now you're seeing all of it. But anyway, but then, you know, for a lot of people, it wasn't about me, it was about what had happened to me, or what I couldn't do, or what they perceived that I couldn't do, that I'd become paraplegic, and then I'd gone from feeling like I could do whatever I wanted to do to feeling like I was disabled, like I was on the outside looking in, which obviously is a lonely place to be. And I'm hoping that everyone picked up a sticker as you came in, because I want to do a quick little exercise. Can I get everyone with an orange sticker to stand up, please? All right, there we go. Okay, you can sit back down. How about everybody with a red sticker? Can I get you to stand up? Okay. All right, there we go. Well done. Can I get everybody, okay, you can sit back down. Can I get everybody with stars drawn on their sticker to stand up? Uh-oh. Can't get good help around here, apparently, huh? So what's going on? Oh, do you have it?
I put it in my pocket.
Oh, this is... So I made the mistake of telling Scott that the person who got the stars would actually get a DVD copy of our film. Okay, can you stand up? Okay, now here we go, yeah. You see how these Rotarians work though, right? This is it. I will take that prize for myself. Okay, and so what's your name?
Ryan.
Ryan. Okay, so Ryan, afterwards, remind me, I will give you a DVD copy of the film that we made of my climb of Mt Kilimanjaro. Okay, so you sit back down. Now, the question is, when that happened, like, what happened there? What did you see? Now, you guys have no idea what I might make you do, right? And so the first group, there was a little nerve. There were some nerves, weren't there? You stand up and you're like, this guy might make me look stupid, right? And there's still that possibility, I guarantee you. But the thing is that you start looking around, don't you? You start looking around and you're like, okay, if this guy's going to make me look stupid, I want to make sure that I don't look stupid alone. We're going to look stupid together, right? And the thing is that the greatest risk that we run in school, in life, is taking no risk at all. If we spend all of our time ensuring that we're not going to look stupid alone, we might well miss what's great about us, our truest passion, like what we have to contribute to the rest of the world to possibly make it a better place. So Einstein was kind of smart, right? And Einstein said, everyone is a genius, but if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll live the rest of its life believing it's stupid. Now, obviously, fish don't climb trees, right? You can see, right? Yeah. Fish don't climb trees, right? But the thing is that if we judge everybody by one test, it's really easy to feel stupid. There's so many different kinds of genius. There are people who can build their own computers. There are people who tell great stories. There are people who help everybody get along. And there's so many different kinds of genius, but if we judge everybody by one criteria, it's really easy to feel like a fish who can't climb a tree. Now, things are going to go wrong, right? No matter what in our lives, things are going to go wrong. And when things go wrong, are you ready? Okay, you remember your assignment, right? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
It's not what happens to you. It's what you do when it happens to you.
Okay, we're getting a little variety. It still sounds a little bit like we're in church, but anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do. And I think this is a great mindset. This mindset for me was really as a result of being a ski racer. There's no such thing as a perfect run. And it's usually the person who recovers most quickly who is most successful, right? You keep the skis pointed down the hill where you recover most quickly and you hope to be successful. But Donna Volpetta, who created this program with me, who actually is an alumnus who Donna more when she was here, thought we needed something more, thought we needed questions that we could ask ourselves when things went wrong. And she came up with what she calls the 4 S's of resilience. And I'm going to need a little help from you on this one. Self-situation, support, and strategy. And the first question is, am I a victim or am I a survivor? And what do you think? Victim or survivor? Survivor, exactly. Is the situation overwhelming or is there a challenge? Challenge. Are we alone or part of a team? One strategy or many? Many strategies. And that's the thing. As Joe and I were setting up this whole thing through the AV, when I first started this, I had one strategy. If it didn't work, I'd turn my computer off and I'd turn it back on. And if that didn't work, I'd turn it off and I'd turn it back on again. That was pretty much the only strategy that I had. Now, when I was in the hospital, I did not want to be in the hospital. Hospital was for sick people. I didn't want to be there, but I had to be there. I hurt myself really badly. I went from 175 pounds down to 125 pounds. I was like a baby. I couldn't get out of bed by myself. I couldn't dress myself. They taught me how to dress myself lying in bed, which is kind of hard when you move your legs. A whole lot harder when you can't move your legs and you can't sit up. So just to put my pants on, it's kind of this combination of like a soccer throw-in, rodeo lasso kind of thing. I hope you get one pant in each pant leg, and then I had to pull them halfway up, and I'm super weak at this point. And I had to roll over to pull one side up, and so I'm like windmilling my arms to try to roll over, and then windmilling them back to the other side to pull the other side up. I'm covered in sweat. I'm exhausted. My fly's over my left hip. I'm like, really? Sitting down and I look ridiculous. Like, this is totally unfair. And I'm breaking my back, losing the use of my legs, was the closest to death that I could imagine being, like without dying. I mean, it took a huge part of me, but this was also the most powerful that I've ever been. And it's the most powerful I've ever been because I had to get better. I had to get better every day, so my life became black and white. Something that either helped me get better or it wouldn't. And sometimes the greatest victories were just maintaining a sense of optimism as everything was going wrong around me. Just in believing that I could continue to get to that ultimate goal. In not letting it beat me. And those are my greatest victories. But I got a little bit better every day. A little bit better, and a little bit better. And I was just about ready to leave the hospital. And the head doctor called me into his office. There we go. called me into his office. There he is. And I had no interaction whatsoever with this guy. And he said to me, "You're not ready to leave." And it's totally unfair. Like, he looks smart, he looks like a doctor, he's behind the big mahogany desk, I have my pants all askew. And, well, why am I not ready to leave? And he said, "Because you haven't been depressed." I was completely nonplussed by this. I was like, really? Like, I kind of thought I was doing well not being depressed. But he's looking at me going, this guy has no idea how much his life has changed. When he figures it out, then he's going to be really depressed, and then we're going to have a problem. But I'd always been taught that I could do whatever I wanted to do. That if I was willing to work hard enough, if I was creative enough, I could do whatever I wanted to do. And at 20 years old, I didn't want somebody to say, "You know what, sorry, you can't really do whatever you want to do anymore." So I understood where he was coming from, and I said, "Look, you know what? I promise you, I'll have bad days later, but right now, I need to prove to myself that I can still do whatever I want to do, that I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor." 362 days after the accident, I started to ski again in a monoski. It did not look like this, right? No, it did not look like this that day. We went out, Mark Bradford was the coach at the time, the monoski arrived at the ski room, he put it together, he said, it was the middle of exams, he said, hey, your ski arrived, do you want to go to the mountain? I said, yes, of course, I want to go to the mountain. So we went up to the bowl, got into it, figured out how to get strapped into the whole thing, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, I could go to the top, right? I mean, this is what we do. And I started skiing at such a young age that I didn't remember not knowing how to make a turn. I'd always known how to make a turn as far as I could remember, and so he didn't want to be the one to say no, so we went to the top of the ski and lift, and I got off, went down the ramp and fell over as I was going down the ramp, and he picked me up. Okay, I mean, I understand, like I am going to fall, this is different, but it's also the same. Like the idea of making a ski turn, you put a ski on edge, you put pressure on it, you make the ski bend, you make the ski turn. Like that's the way to do it. So I went into my first turn with this strategy of like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep my upper body pointed down the hill. I'm going to get the ski up on edge and it's all going to work. And I fell over again and he picked me up. I felt like the magician's assistant. I mean, I literally felt like I'd been cut in half. And my brain is going, this is what you need to do. And my body's going, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea at all. And eventually I figured out the balance, because it's kind of like riding a bike in some ways. And I figured out the balance, but it was still completely intimidating. I was looking 10 inches in front of my ski tip, because anything had the ability to knock me over. And I'm traversing across the hill, and I'm looking 10 inches in front of my ski tip, and if you look at your shoes as you walk around, you're going to walk into walls, right? And so I was like, oh, it's all good, it's all good. Oh, there are the woods. And I need to go back in the opposite direction. But I eventually went from 10 inches in front of my ski tip to 10 feet down the hill to 100 feet down the hill. And when I was looking 100 yards down the hill, suddenly I was in charge. The mountain was not dictating to me where I was going, which is how we learn things, right? We learn it in small little increments, blocks of moves. And that's what they talk about, like chess masters. They don't move in one single move, they move in blocks of moves because they understand the game. They built that knowledge through blocks. And for me, that sense of mastery came when I was looking 100 yards down the hill. That I knew where I was going and I had the ability to make the turns within that. It had gone from being completely overwhelming to being a challenge. Now, we don't do this alone. The day of my accident, the ski patrol skied me down to the toboggan, ambulance took me to the first hospital, helicopter actually flew me to the second hospital. My parents and my brother went to the waiting room of the second hospital. And I'm going through all of these tests, they're in the waiting room, they have no idea what's going on. And finally the doctor came out and he said, your brother's broken his back, he'll never walk again. And then he turned and left. And left them all alone. And it was completely emotional, and they cried, and when they were done, my father said, that's the last time we can cry. We have to be strong for Chris. And they were. When I look back on it, the greatest gift that my parents gave to my brother and me was the opportunity to fail. We'd try something, we'd fail, and they'd say, well, what are you going to do now? It's like, really, it's on me? Like, you're not going to fix this? Like, no, what are you going to do now? This is your opportunity to learn. And as much as they wanted to protect me after the accident, they let me continue to make my own decisions. So 2 months after the accident, I returned here to an almost 200-year-old college built on a hill in the middle of February in a wheelchair. And I look back on it and I think that was absolutely, positively crazy. Like, why did they do it? But it was the best decision that I could have made because my relationship with my friends didn't change. I realized that I wasn't alone, that I was still part of that team. And a few years ago, I was in Tibet, which is a long way from home. It took 16 hours driving over these bumpy dirt roads. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Tibet, but everybody drives in the middle of the road until somebody comes in the opposite direction, and then you kind of go to this really slanted, precarious kind of edge and hope to pass each other and then get back to the middle of the road. So it was 16 hours of that. Then I got into China, flew halfway across the world, and when I landed, I drove from the airport to my mailbox because I wanted to see what I'd missed. And my mailbox wasn't one of those mailboxes in front of the house. It was a mailbox at the end of the street. So I drove to the mailbox and I parked my car and I started pulling my chair out and I'm putting the wheels on, and this little girl rode up. She's like 6 years old on her little pink bike, and she said, "What happened to your legs?" Now, I've just flown halfway across the world. I really don't feel like having this conversation. I am completely exhausted, but from the time we're little, we're taught not to stare at someone who looks different, aren't we? It's impolite to stare. But if we never get a chance to ask questions, we never get a chance to know somebody who seemingly is different from us, but probably shares a whole lot more in common, and definitely shares something that they can teach us. So I felt like I'd answer this little girl's question as best I could, because there are hundreds of millions of people in the world with disabilities who, in effect, are invisible. So I told her what I told you, that I had a skiing accident, and I tried to describe it in ways that she might be able to understand it. And I said, you know those little bumps on your back? Well, those are bones, and those bones protect the nerves. And nerves take the message from the brain to the rest of the body. So like if I want my arm to move, my brain says move. My message goes along those nerves to the muscles of my arm, and my arm moves. But because I broke 2 of those bones, it's like cutting a power cord. So now the message doesn't go from my brain to my legs or my legs back. I had no idea how well I was doing. Apparently I was doing pretty well. She said, "So you'll never walk again?" And I said, "No, probably not." And she rode away, and as she rode away, she said, "Well, that's too bad." I wish that I had stopped her. Because if I'd never had my accident, I never would have been the best in the world at anything. I became the best monoskier in the world. But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had my accident. She saw the tragedy. She didn't see all the strategies that went into not being able to balance on the monoski, to then not being able to turn, to each time I reached a new plateau, having to come up with a new strategy. She just saw the tragedy. She didn't see the potential gift. All right, so now it's back to your line. Are you guys ready? Do you feel okay? I don't feel like I've given you the full visual here, so I apologize. But okay, we're going to go to you, and hopefully you can carry the day. Here, are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you.
There we go. All right. Yes, it's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you. Because you know what? The name tags, the labels, the limitations that we wear, we have the ability to change that. We saw that mine, in effect, got changed as a result of the accident. But then, after competing, they're going to change again. But you know what? Some things don't change. I continue to be a paraplegic. That hasn't changed. But I also became a world champion, which was pretty cool. Now the next one is the hardest name tag that I've ever worn. I told you that I was in the hospital for 2 months, and then I came back to school here. When I came back to school, so many of my friends said to me, "I could never do what you've done. I could never." And in their eyes, I was put on this path. I became like this superhero as a result of returning to school, which in some ways was really cool because it was so different than what I thought they would think. Because it was going to be about what I couldn't do, and they're saying, "No, I could never do what you've done." But this was the most difficult one that I've ever worn because we all create images for ourselves, don't we? to keep ourselves safe, to not get picked on. In a lot of ways, it was harder for me to retire from competitive sport than it was to break my back. Because my image was more tied to being a superhero than it was to walking. I didn't know where that image of the superhero stopped and where I started. So I wondered how I could allow myself to be vulnerable, to be honest. And what I came up with was I had to have a goal that was bigger than me myself. And that's when I decided to climb Mt Kilimanjaro. 19,340 foot Mt Kilimanjaro, tallest mountain in Africa, what they call the roof of Africa. And I thought if I could get to the top of the highest place that I could find, that people would have to see me on a wheelchair, to see me, and to see the hundreds of millions of people like me. And I was going to draw the attention that I needed to draw. I could do this on my own power. I was the first unassisted paraplegic to make it to the summit of Kilimanjaro. It'd be like breaking a record. In my mind, it would be kind of like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile back in 1953, when they said the human is not supposed to run that fast, and if he does, that his heart and lungs will explode, and he ran that fast, and they watched, and his heart and lungs didn't explode, so then they had to look at things differently. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to force people to look at me and the hundreds of millions of people like me differently. But at about 18,000 feet, 18,500 feet, we ran into this boulder field. And I couldn't get over these boulders. So my crew and the porters, they carried me for 100 feet. 100 feet of the 13,000 feet that we climbed from the 6,000 foot base and the 19,000 foot summit. But to me, that 100 feet meant that I failed. It meant that I failed my team, which had worked and sacrificed for 2 years just to give me the opportunity to try to climb the mountain. It meant that I failed those hundreds of millions of people who didn't even know who I was, but whose lives I was trying to affect. So we dumped down into the crater of the volcano, of the dormant volcano. Oops, hold on now. Come on now. Go back one more. Okay, so we dumped down into the crater of the dormant volcano, and I'm crushed. I'm crushed because I feel like I failed so many people. I'm also living. I keep thinking I've got to talk to Dave. Dave was my guide. He developed that vehicle so it looks like a Mars rover married to arm pedal power. We also ran up this 19,000 foot mountain 5 times to scout it out to find the best route for me. And I finally got a quiet moment going across the crater. And I took Dave aside and I said, Dave, you disappointed me. You let me lie to all these people. You let me tell them I could do it unassisted. And you knew these boulders were here. You knew that I couldn't do it. And Dave guides throughout the world. And he said, nobody climbs a mountain alone. Everybody does it as part of a team. This is that light bulb moment, that epiphany moment where I go, oh, so you mean this is the lesson I'm supposed to learn? That I started with this really altruistic goal to affect the lives of hundreds of millions of people, but this is really my lesson. This is why you do something that is this difficult, because you learn things in absolute terms. From that time that I was in the hospital, I had to be bigger, better, faster, stronger, in order to be equal. I had to say, I can do it myself for fear of being a burden to my friends and family. Because if I was a burden, then they might leave me. And then I'd be alone. But my struggle the first 5 days on the mountain empowered my team to join that struggle. And they thought nothing of the danger of carrying me over these boulders. And together we achieved the seemingly impossible. Made it to the top of 19,341 foot Mt Kilimanjaro. It's 40 or 41. Sometimes they're inexact measurements out there. You never know exactly. But anyway, made it to the top of Mt Kilimanjaro. And I was a little bit nervous at this point because we had spent a lot of money that we didn't actually have. And we needed to find a way to get back this money that we didn't have and pay off some of the people that we had promised money to that we didn't actually have the money to pay. And I needed people to tell my story. I needed newspapers, magazines, television, radio to tell my story. And I was worried that they were going to say, you know what? I carried you for 100 feet. You didn't break the record. We're not really interested. But then I looked at the guy next to me. Tajiri had been a porter on the mountain. He was up early one morning, carrying the gear. actually for an Appalachian Mountain Club group, carrying the gear, and there was a rock slide. Rock slide that killed 3 people who were still asleep in their tents. Ripped Tajiri's leg off of his body. And we talk about the name tags, the labels, the limitations that we wear. In developing countries, sometimes they believe that disability shows that God is punishing you and your family. That you have done something worthy of punishment. When we first met Tajiri, because he worked for our guide service, my producer on the film said, we should have time with us. He's so great to have African, a former reporter, we can come out and be a peril to your story, it'll make for a better movie. And I said, I don't know if we can do it. This belief that God was punishing him and his family, he seemed like he'd given up. But they impressed upon me we needed to help him, so we bought him a new prosthetic leg, one that was lighter, one that fit him better. He went out and he trained really hard. First day back in the mountain, he said to the other porters, you know, we thought you'd see me here again. Well, I'm back. And he was. And we've got to learn from people like Tajiri, because how often do we say that something is impossible, and it's entirely true, until somebody does it. And if somebody's going to do it, why not us, right? Why won't we be the ones to do it? Remember the questions that we can ask ourselves when things go wrong? Self-situation support and strategies. Are we going to be a victim or survivor? Survivor, right? For me, I wasn't going to be the guy in the hospital, but I wanted to continue to prove that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Now, this analogy I don't think will work quite as well with this group as it does with the school groups. But I'm assuming there are a couple of you out there who might play video games. Right? And when you play video and your character dies, you're like, okay, that's unacceptable, right? Like, I'm going to finish this, like we're hitting reset, we're going back, right? Why can't we take that mentality into our everyday lives? If something goes wrong, we go, oh, so this is an opportunity for me to prove how good I really am, right? Like, it's gotten harder, life has gotten harder, so let's see if I can do this. Nobody climbs a mountain alone, and do we have one strategy or many? We have many strategies, right? Thomas Edison credited with developing the light bulb, but he didn't do it overnight. He said, I've not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work. And found a lot of ways it would not work before he found the one that would. And remember, we also talked about the idea of the greatest risk we take is taking no risk at all. Wayne Gretzky scored almost double the amount of points of anybody in the NHL, and he said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. You don't take a shot, you're guaranteed not to score. If you don't take a risk, you might not ever find that genius that Einstein was talking about. And that would be a huge tragedy. Now, hopefully this one works. Michael Jordan was pretty good at what he did too, right? Let's see if this video works. If not, I'm going to have to do it myself. Oh, no, it works.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
I love that. I'm definitely glad that he did it, because I can't match Michael Jordan's voice, right? I mean, that's a pretty amazing voice, that's for sure. But, you know, I mean, it really is. He used the greatest effort. And he said he failed over and over and over again in his life. And that's such a great reminder for all of us that failure, if we try something and we fail and we learn from that failure, we're far more likely to succeed the next time. It's not a brick wall, it's a stepping stone to our next success. So, you all had your stickers. You didn't realize that there would be an assignment. And not only will there be one assignment, there will be 2 assignments. And the first assignment is write on the sticker how you want people to see you. That genius that Einstein was talking about, you might be the only one who knows it's there. How are you going to develop this genius? How are you going to grow it? How are you going to cultivate it? So the first part is write down how you want the world to see you. The second part is to put this someplace that you are going to see it. I say this to kids, and I'll probably say it to you guys as well, with permission, obviously, right? Yeah, this might be spousal permission or something like that. You might, can I put this here? Is it okay? Because one of the places that I think would be great to put it is on the mirror in your bathroom. You brush your teeth in the morning, and that's the person I'm going to be today. And then as you brush your teeth before you go to bed, check back in and see, was I that person today? Here are a few suggestions. I'm just going to see if you guys laugh as much at like nerd and those kinds of things as the kids do. But yeah, I mean, it's and in the spirit of sharing, the name tags that I'm trying to live up to are that I want to be fit, creative, and productive. Productive to me, it's like we can always be more efficient at what we do. Can we get it done more quickly? Can we find a way to prioritize? I have this theory about some of the people who sit on my board. There's some really successful people, and a lot of them went to really good schools. Some of them went to Middlebury and did very little at good schools, and they made it through. And one of the biggest lessons that they learned is, what is the one thing that I need to do to keep moving forward? I was one of the people who tried to do everything, and I look at these guys and say they actually got something out of their education. Their parents might not think they got anything out of their education, but they got something really beneficial out of it. And that, to me, the productive part is trying to figure out what that priority is. How can I be most efficient, and how can I also get to do the other things that I want? If I get a workout in, I'm far happier, I'm more focused, I sleep better. And the creative part is going from zero to nothing, or zero to being able to do everything, to that sense of mastery. And so when I came back to the mountain, I went on the road. I was on the road for 3 months trying to figure out how to pay for everything that we had just done. And I went to my parents for Christmas, and my mother said to me, "You need to write a children's book on the climb." I said, "Wow, that's a great idea. As soon as I find the emotional space to do it, I will do it." January 1st, I mentioned I was teetering on the verge of personal bankruptcy at this point. This is when your insurance deductible resets. And so I was going to do a workout in my basement, and I was wearing my Lycra suit to go get in my racer. Lycra, carpeted steps, sometimes not a great mix. I slid a couple of steps, holding onto the railing, ran into the wall, heard a crack, thought, well, that must be drywall, it should be fine, and then my leg just started to swell. A fairly decent pain block. I was down there, and there was a thought at the moment where I thought, well, I mean, I'm down here, I should probably just do my workout anyway, right? And, you know, cooler heads prevailed, and I went back up and went to the emergency room. I'd broken my tib fib. The next day, I'm lying there on my bed with my leg on 3 pillows to get my leg above my heart to reduce the swelling, and the inspiration for the children's book hit me. And so I got up and I grabbed some computer paper and I grabbed a pen and I wrote and I drew as quickly as I possibly could, because I had no idea how long this inspiration would stay with me. And I made it to the end. And then I looked at it, all of my drawings were stick figures. So I put it away. And then I got inspiration for another one, and I did like 6 of these. And eventually I was talking to an illustrator, or talking to a publisher and an illustrator, and I thought, you know, I have an idea of how I want this to look. And so I read a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and her thesis is that if you have the physical dexterity to write your name, which I don't do that all that well, but if you have the physical dexterity to write your name, you have the physical dexterity to draw. It's all in how you look at things and how you see what's out there. And so I went through all the exercises, and I was amazed that at one point I went, that actually looks like what I intended it to look like. So I wrote and drew a children's book. I did one for my wife's birthday. It's called, Is It Lonely to Be a 4-Leaf Clover? And it's about a 4-leaf clover that is hiding what makes it different. It is hiding the 4th leaf. And not successfully, but it's trying to hide its 4th leaf until it meets a dandelion. My wife is a big fan of dandelions. We actually wrote them into our wedding vows, and I lifted some of those things, but I'd written the wedding vows, so I felt like it was not really plagiarism. I think I could still sign the on without a problem. But, and they fall in love. And the 4-leaf clover becomes pregnant. And it's all very Disney. There's not even a bee involved in the whole thing. There isn't, I promise. But the question is, what's the 4-leaf clover going to, what's the baby going to look like? And my wife is blonde, so the question is, you know, is it going to be yellow and sort of stately or elegant like a tulip, or is it going to be like fortified and stately like our yellow rose? it turns out that it looks like all of us, as unique as a four-leaf clover, and as bold and fierce as the dandelion. And the creative part is I want to remember that that's often when I feel most alive, when I'm creating something, and that I can go from not being able to do something to being able to do it well enough to be willing to publish it. So I think this is your line coming up here. If I can get it, there we go. All right, this is the last one. You guys ready? I promise, the last one. A lot of energy. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you.
Exactly. It's not what happens to you. It's what you do with what happens to you. Because those successful people, those people like Michael Jordan, it's not like they didn't have to struggle. They just struggled better and longer than the rest of us. When we were ready to quit, they kept struggling. Now that's the end of my presentation, but I think that we have some time for questions. Do we have some time for questions, Scott? Yes, we have some time for questions. And I'm going to make you do the same thing that I make the kids do. So I'm going to make you raise your hand. And then when I call on you, stand up, tell me your name, and ask your question. Do I have to remind you that it's questions of who, what, when, where, how? Those kind of things. You want information from me, as opposed to telling me that you have a princess bike? Does happen. Are there any questions? See, this is where you guys get bashful, isn't it? I actually, funny enough, I speak like, I don't know, probably over 100 times a year. And I have no problem, I get nervous, but I have no problem getting in front of the crowd. But I'm far more nervous asking the question. The question loops in my brain, like, okay, I want to make sure, okay, get in, get out, you know, don't call too much attention to yourself and let the person on stage talk. So don't feel too nervous, because I do, so anyway. You guys gonna be bashful, huh? Howard? No? All right, we have one over here. Hold on, so you have to tell me your name, remember?
My name's May.
May, okay. Hi.
Did you ever get depressed and have to struggle through that part of the recovery?
Did I ever get depressed? I actually did after I retired. It was far more difficult for me to retire from competitive sport than it was to break my back. And it really was, it was a sense of identity. I think that when I had my accident, I was so pushed to move forward to, I need to get back to school. Then I needed to find a way to get through school. Then I started competing. I needed to learn how to ski. It was all of this. There was always something in front of me. And when I retired, I felt like I was that guy in a wheelchair. I had this resume, but it wasn't necessarily reflective of who I was moving forward. And I didn't know. And this sense of optimism, which really for me is what was, I think, at the center of my recovery and the center of my real power. I felt like I didn't want to be optimistic. I felt like in some ways that like the world owed me something. I had done all of this stuff and somebody should help me to be successful. And that really didn't seem to work all that well. I'm not saying it was a good choice, but I really, and it was a lot of Kilimanjaro. It was a lot of having that project and sharing my voice for something bigger than me that helped me move through it and find a productive way to contribute. But yeah, it was crushing, and it was a weird thing too. It's like I could be out doing whatever I was doing, and then I'd come home to my house, and I was living by myself at the time. Come home to my house, and it was almost like depression became that friend that you could kind of look for. Oh, okay, all right. Well, at least I'm not alone in some ways. And as bizarre as that might sound, but it was a weird kind of thing. But it was more difficult after I'd kind of proven that I could do whatever I wanted to do. And go, what's next? And yeah, so that was a hard time. It really was. So. You almost this is like being at the auction. How much did that cost me? All right, and what's your name there, young man?
Did you also do some chair racing?
Did I do some chair racing? Yes, Pete. Yes, I did.
And the second question, how many times do you get on snow generally?
How many times do I get on snow? Okay, two-part question. So I raced wheelchairs as well. So when we were growing up as ski racers, like we ran. That's in the off season. That's what you did. You went and you ran. which probably isn't the most conducive thing, training for ski racing, but it was what we did. And so wheelchair racing was my version of running. And so I went out because I said I wanted to be the best in the world at what I was doing. And so part of it was preparing to be the best in the world. And I went out to Seattle, Washington over spring break and got a racing wheelchair. So it was a 3-wheeled wheelchair and started doing road races. And then, and I was decent at road races, but then I went to a track meet and I realized that I could start pretty quickly, get up to speed pretty quickly, and that became a greater outlet for me. I continued to do road races. I'm doing the marathon in Beirut this year. Go to the Beirut Marathon, November 10th, so it's kind of forcing me to get back in shape, and sometimes we need these things. But yeah, I raced wheelchairs. I did 3 summer games, 3 summer Paralympics, won a silver medal in the 200 meters in Sydney. And actually, at one point, I ran, sometimes picking your races. Well, I did the St. George Marathon in Utah, which loses, I think, about 2,500 feet or something like that. And I went sub-world record for the wheelchair marathon, which is 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 17 seconds. So it's a 20-mile-an-hour average. I hit about 50 miles an hour on one downhill. Yeah. It's fast. At 50 miles an hour, it helps your minute per mile average. It really does. Yeah. Tears streaming down my face. So I had done that and actually won world championships in both winter and summer. So I was one of a small group of people to actually be a world champion in both winter and summer. And now I actually do a fair amount of skiing. I do some skiing for Deer Valley. And I live in Park City, Utah now, which Deer Valley is kind of like the Bowl, just a little bit bigger. And similar though, in many ways. People are equally nice, I think, at Deer Valley, if that's possible to say, as they are at the Bowl. We don't have a library though, but other than that, it's good. But yeah, I get on snow probably out about 40 times this year. I coach a little bit. I was in Breckenridge coaching some aspiring disabled skiers, some veterans. And that for me is a whole lot of fun to be able to share. I think I spent 30 years as a ski racer. And you accumulate a bit of knowledge, you hope, in that time to be able to share that. So yeah, so I spent a bunch of time on snow too. And it still is my first love. And it really, I don't know about you guys, can you turn your minds off? I'm still like, that doesn't feel exactly right. I've got to figure out how to do that a little bit better. You think that when you retire, you just kind of do it. And I'm still coaching myself in my head as I go along. And okay. Anybody else?
What is the name of your...
Hold on, you have to have to tell me your name now.
Four-leaf clover book.
Oh, what is the name of the four-leaf clover book? Okay, the name of it, Is It Lonely to Be a Four-Leaf Clover?
Oh, yeah, you said that.
That is the name of it, yes. Yep. So, yeah. It's on my website. You can go visit the website. Yeah. $16.95 plus shipping. So,
My name's Vicki. My daughter Carrie was in school with
Yes.
you. I think she's class 93. Are you 91?
I was 91, but I graduated on skis at the Bowl, so I was like 91 and a half, I guess.
I've always, I trust my daughter when she tells me things, but she remembers you coming back to school and walking into the dining hall. Can you speak about, I'm assuming that happened. Can you
Oh, so this is, yes, because we were talking about this too. So this is when I first came back, one of my goals, the only way that I could see that I would recover was to walk again. That was the only way. And so I had straight leg braces that would allow me to get up and stand, so they'd lock my knees out, and I had crutches that I could get up and walk with them. And that was my goal, and I remember coming back. So it was so I came back to school, then I left for the summer and learned how to walk, and then I came back and tried to do this. And one of the things I realized quickly was that it took a whole lot more time to get around. So I did, one of my workouts, I went to the track at Mt College, which is about 3 miles from where I grew up. And I went with my father, and it took me 45 minutes to walk around the track. And in my racing career, I've done that in 50 seconds. And so initially, yeah, I tried to do that, and that to me was a representation of walking, of recovery. But in the interim, in between coming back to school and then coming back again in the fall, I went to a place called Shake a Leg, which was a secondary rehabilitation for people with spinal cord injuries. It was a holistic healing center. They did a lot of body work, they did massage and Feldenkrais and Rolfing and these kinds of things. And they also put on a play right at the end of the summer. And an off-Broadway company came up and put on a play. And they said, well, you need to audition. And I said, I don't do that kind of thing. Like, I'm here to walk. I'm walking out of here. This is the way it works. And they got me to audition. And I auditioned. And I was cast as the lead in the play. And it was amazing. I had to stand for the final scene and give my monologue. And what I realized at the end of that summer was that the walking really didn't have as much to do with recovery as being healthy, happy, and having dreams that I could go and pursue. And so walking was a component of it initially, but I realized that sometimes the way that we feel like we have to be for everybody else can be as limiting as anything. And when I was left to be able to do what I wanted to do, it let me dream and create a whole lot more. So, unfortunately, that's the end. But thank you all for coming and joining. It's been great to share the afternoon.